Well, here we are at the very end of the history of philosophy. No, not quite. We're at the end of our history of philosophy for this class. We're going to wrap up with the origins of early modern philosophy and a guy called René Descartes. He died in 1650. Light glare may make that hard to read, huh? Oh, Descartes died in 1650. Say his name right. Say Descartes, René Descartes. Don't say Descartes. You'll sound like an idiot. Nobody will respect you if you're saying Descartes. Say Descartes. The adjectival form of his name is Cartesian. And he was a mathematician. You may have heard of the Cartesian coordinate system in your high school math classes or in your college algebra classes, right? That stuff you learned on how to plot a graph on an X and Y coordinate system, that was invented by our friend René Descartes. He was a very brilliant thinker, as important in philosophy as he was in mathematics. What I'd like to build for you is the case that Descartes made for a position called dualism, called Cartesian Dualism, dual, D-U-A-L, dualism. I'm gonna tell you how Descartes came up with this view, which is very influential on everyone right up to this very day. Most people know that Descartes said the famous quote, "I think, therefore I am." Many people know that quote, but do you know why Descartes said that? That quote has some deeper significance we need to get at in this lecture. Let's go. What was Descartes trying to do? What was Descartes trying to do? Here's what Descartes wanted to do. He wanted to build a system of completely certain knowledge. Descartes wanted to build a body of knowledge that would be completely, rigorously scientific and have complete certainty about it. Descartes wanted to create a method whereby he would never again get anything wrong. If you want to understand this, you got to think about when Descartes lived, right? He lives in the 17th century. It's the age of scientific revolutions, right? Lots of things were changing. People realized that many of the things they thought were correct were wrong. People were starting to believe that the Earth wasn't the center of the solar system, right? That not everything was rotating around the Earth. People had believed that for a very long time. This was a huge monumental shift. And also we discovered a whole continent with people on it that we never knew about. That's what happened in this era, right? Explorers set out, they got to America, and they discovered, none of this was supposed to have happened. That really altered everyone's view of everything. So Descartes was really concerned with, well, can we make sure this doesn't happen again? Can we make sure that we never end up in this situation where we have to just radically revise so many of our beliefs collectively as an entire culture, as an entire society in such a short period of time? Descartes wanted to create a system of perfect and certain knowledge. So Descartes' method for doing this was to clear away all his old beliefs. Lots of people here like the metaphor. In fact, I think Descartes himself may have used the metaphor. He's building the city anew. He's trying to build a new city, and in order to do so, he's going to have to destroy everything in the old city. He has to knock down everything. Because he wants the foundation for the new city to be undefeatable. He wants the foundation for the new city that he's going to build, the new body of knowledge, the new science. It has to be founded on something that can never be overturned. It has to be founded on a fact that can never be revised. That's what he needs at the foundation. So, Descartes sets about a project that we call skepticism. He said it, now he's not what we call it, it's called Cartesian skepticism sometimes, because Descartes was not a skeptic in the full sense, right? Descartes wants beliefs and he'll have beliefs. He doesn't think skepticism is a proper philosophy. He doesn't think you should just be perpetually skeptical, but he thinks you have to start from a position of skepticism and try to doubt every single belief that you have. Descartes even comes up with a method that you can doubt every single one of your beliefs all at once, just like that. His method is a thought experiment. He calls it the evil deceiver thought experiment. Suppose that there's some sort of like God, but not a benevolent God, but an evil deceiving God, a trickster God, a God who wants us to always believe false things. A God who's constantly putting all these false beliefs into our minds. Well, if you can't, this lecture is brought to you by the Coca-Cola Corporation. If you can't show that there's no evil deceiver, if that's a live possibility, Descartes says, well then, you have no right to any of your beliefs. Until you can show that that belief was not put there as a result of some malevolent being, well then you can never be certain in your beliefs. You can never be certain that you're not being deceived. So that's the evil deceiver argument. If it's possible that there's an evil deceiver, until you've proven that there's not an evil deceiver giving you all false beliefs, then you can't be certain of anything you believe. So this puts Descartes in quite a conundrum, right? He wants to have certainty about all of his beliefs, and the first thing he's done is gotten rid of all of his beliefs. He has nothing. Where is he going to begin? He needs at least one belief to start building on. By the way, you build onto things, right? You build on things. You build on a foundation. You don't build off of things. I've noticed that weird linguistic tick slipping into language. And if you're going to go on any job interviews, I'd urge you to break that habit. Say building on. Descartes needed one belief that he could build on. Well, what was it? The belief that Descartes found, the one thing he couldn't doubt, was that he exists. I think, therefore I am. That's an argument. That's a set of statements, one of which, I think, is supposed to lend evidence to the other. I exist. I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum, said Descartes. That's the Latin. I think, therefore I am. Okay, well now he's got one belief. Can he get more from that belief? Well, now that he knows he exists, what's the natural thing to ask? I am. How about what am I? What am I? And this is where Descartes' mathematism, that's the word, mathematism comes in. His mathematic inclinations come into play here, because he uses a very geometric method to try to find out what he is. In geometry, it's a general principle in geometry that if two geometric figures if they don't have the same properties, they have different properties, and they're different. They're different kinds of shapes. Well, Descartes applied that same kind of reasoning to what he is. I think, therefore I am. What am I? A thinking thing. A thinking thing. But can a thinking thing be a body? Well, what's a body? A body is something extended in 3 dimensions. That's not thinking. Thinking is to have thoughts, it's to wonder, it's to ask questions, it's to doubt, it's to have all the mental phenomena. None of that is extended into space. There's no reason to think any of that's extended into space. But a body, like my body, is. That's all a body is. A body is just something that's extended in 3 dimensions. So Descartes comes to the conclusion he's not a body. Descartes comes to the conclusion that he's a mind. Right? This is called Cartesian dualism, the belief that there's two kinds of substances populating the universe. Physical things, bodies, things extended into 3 dimensions, and minds, mental things, intellects. What you are is not a body, what you are is a mind. That your mind is, for the moment, inhabiting a body or doing something to your body is all quite accidental for the dualist. Your body is quite unnecessary for the dualist. So that's Cartesian dualism, and that's his case for it. He's trying to get a perfect system of knowledge going, and you can read more about Descartes and how he builds from there, builds up more of a system of knowledge from dualism even. What he ultimately has to do is bring God into the picture. He tries to generate an argument for the existence of God. We're not going to get into that in this class. But think about the legacy of Descartes. So before we talked about Descartes, Plato had some sympathies with this kind of Cartesian way of thinking. Some people call Plato a dualist. But what was the main theory of the human nature that we had studied before Descartes? Aristotle. Remember, for Aristotle, what's a human being? A human being is an animal, which is to say a certain kind of body, that's formed to do human things, to do human stuff. Well, that's a very straightforward and nice explanation of what a human being is. But think about that bumper sticker I saw the other day. The bumper sticker that said, your body is just on loan. My body is just on loan? Loan to who? I mean, on Aristotle's account, I am a body. What do you mean my body is on loan? Oh! See, Cartesian dualism has really started to affect so much of how we talk about ourselves today. Even, you might say, oh, this sounds very spooky. This sounds like souls. Even this notion of a soul, where your soul is a kind of like ghost in a machine. It's a ghost that like makes your body do stuff. And it's like inhabiting it, something like that, right? That way of thinking of the soul comes from Descartes, not Aristotle. I mean, Aristotle talks about the soul also. Aristotle and Aquinas, they think soul is just the form of a living thing. After Descartes, the soul gets turned into this ghost that inhabits a body. And thus, we give rise to the notion, for the first time in history perhaps, that there can be people without bodies. People without bodies. Well, think of a famous philosopher who's very much influenced by Descartes. His name is Richard Swinburne. He's a British philosopher. He wrote a book defending theism. He wrote a book defending belief in what he calls belief in God. And that book begins with these sentences. By theist, I mean a person who believes in God. By God, I mean a person without a body, who knows everything, can do anything, etc., etc., etc. People without bodies, right? Well, you can only make sense of that notion, the notion of people without bodies, I think, if you go on a certain journey with Descartes first, right? If you go down this path of thinking that what you are, what you really are, if you prefer, is some invisible mind, and that your body is just, accidental to who you really are. If you go down that road, well, you're going down a very Cartesian road. It's a very recent road. It's certainly not a traditional Judeo-Christian road, right? No, this is all very recent ways of speaking about things. So I think this is a good place to end our study of the history of philosophy, is with René Descartes and his theory of substance dualism. I hope you've enjoyed studying the history of philosophy. We spent most of our time in ancient philosophy with Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. You're never going to run out of things to study in those guys. You can always go back to Plato and keep studying philosophy. For the rest of your life, you can do that. But I wanted you to at least get a sense for the history right up through Descartes. Okay, have a good one.